Okay, vestibular system central pathways. And hopefully at this time, this looks very familiar to you where you have your cortical regions, here's your thalamus, thalami, here's your midbrain, your pons, medulla, fleshy, spinal cord, as well as your cerebellum here in the back, right? Everybody got it? Should be pretty straightforward. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and label all the players that are involved as far as nuclei are concerned and component cells before, and then I'm just going to make some connections. Okay, talk about these different things. One of the first ones that I'm going to add here is, does anybody remember the name of, or the part, or the name for the part of the cerebellum that's involved in balance? Yeah, that flocculonodular lobe. So it's going to be a little bit of cerebellar review here. Okay. So that's part of your vestibulocerebellum, right? That is your vestibulocerebellum, and that's called your flocculonodular lobe. Okay, hopefully everybody remembers that's intimately connected with the vestibular nucleus. Okay, and if we had the draw on the vestibular nucleus, here's vestibular nucleus on this side, located in the pons, cranial nerve number 8. Okay, so there's one on the right and one on the left. Okay, that's your vestibular nucleus. Does anybody remember the name of the deep cerebellar nucleus used by the flocculonodular lobe? Vestigial. Good. Yeah, so this is going to be your vestigial nucleus. Okay, remember the vestibular nucleus is used by the flocculonodular lobe as well as the vermis of the cerebellum. And then there's also a special cell type that's located here and in all parts of the cerebellum, but we're just going to draw one in for the flocculonodular lobe here. And this cell type is always connected with the deep cerebellar nucleus. Does anybody remember the name of that cell type? Good. Purkinje. P-U-R-K-I-N-J-E. Purkinje cell. Perfect. And hopefully you also remember that there's a connection, a connector that comes from the pons, connects the pons to the cerebellum. That's going to be your inferior cerebellar peduncle. Inferior cerebellar peduncle. I'll just go ahead and draw, as a review, axons coming out of the vestibular nucleus, enter into the cerebellum through the inferior cerebellar peduncle and synapse with Purkinje cell, the flocculonodular lobe. That Purkinje cell is already connected to its vestigial nucleus, but make sure that everybody knows where your head is in three-dimensional space, really important. That vestigial nucleus sends out an axon that also goes through the inferior cerebellar peduncle and synapses again with that vestibular nucleus. And that's just a little review of vestibulocerebellar pathway. Okay, other players here in the system are going to be, as I said previously, there's a very intimate connection between the vestibular system and the visual system. And that's because the vestibular system is hooked up to the cranial nerve nuclei that are involved in extraocular eye motions. So what cranial nerve nuclei are involved in extraocular eye motions? What's the first one here in the medial pons? Yeah, 6. It's going to be abducens here. Okay, and to kind of help make it clear. I'm just going to put my midline in just so that you can see left from right. I think it helps. Okay, so you have cranial nerve number 6, which is your abducens nucleus here in the pons. Okay, that's going to be involved with lateral rectus, right? That's your abducens nucleus. Okay, what other cranial nerves were involved in eye movements? How about here at the inferior level of the inferior colliculus in the midbrain is going to be, which cranial nervous nucleus is this? Trochlear. Good. Okay, that's going to be your trochlear nucleus. Bless you. Okay, trochlear nucleus, and then heading on up at the level of the superior colliculus in the midbrain is our old friend oculomotor. So superior oblique, innervated by trochlear nucleus, oculomotor has the rest. So this is going to be their oculomotor nucleus. And one more thing I'm going to put here. Purple. This is just going to be a nucleus that resides in the thalamus. And that's a player. Okay, the nucleus that resides in the thalamus. It's a non-specified nucleus. It's just, I'll just put that down. It's a thalamic nucleus. Okay. Doesn't have a special name. Okay. Everybody see where we are? So what happens? Connected to these vestibular nuclei are the vestibular apparatus that we just drew. That 8th cranial nerve is coming in and connecting to your vestibular nucleus, and that's how the signal gets through. So if I had to draw that, so this is cranial nerve 8 coming in here from a vestibular apparatus, synapsing on the right side, and then here's cranial nerve 8 coming in and synapsing on the vestibular nucleus on the left side. On the left side. Okay, so all that information is coming in, and the vestibular nucleus is in charge. It's receiving this information from the vestibular system and then communicating with the cerebellum. Not only communicating with the cerebellum, but also with the cranial nerve nuclei that are involved in extraocular eye motions. Information coming in, and to make it simple, I'm just going to draw one side. It'll get really crowded if I try and do two. So I'm just going to focus on drawing the central pathways for the vestibular system on this side. Okay, so coming out of this vestibular nucleus, there's going to be a synapse with the 6th cranial nerve, abducens nucleus here, and there's also going to be a synapse with the contralateral abducens nucleus. Okay, so information coming from one side is not only, there's not only a connection ipsilaterally, there's also a connection contralaterally with the abducens nucleus. And in addition to that, there's also an axon sent out from the vestibular nucleus, set up ipsilaterally to the trochlear nucleus. Okay, and then there's also one that comes here contralaterally, the contralateral trochlear nucleus. Same situation happens from the vestibular nucleus, axons coming up here to synapse with 3rd cranial nerve, oculomotor nucleus, and then on the other side, traveling up contralaterally to the oculomotor nucleus. So these connections are already set up. We don't know yet anything about depolarization or hyperpolarization. We're going to get to that in a minute. But I'm trying to show you that these connections are already set up ipsilaterally and contralaterally to these extraocular nuclei. Questions? Got it? Okay. And then there's one more synapse that's going to happen, and that's from the ipsilateral vestibular nucleus. There's an axon that comes out here, and then it's going to make a connection with the contralateral thalamic nucleus. Vestibular information is really important. And then that thalamic nucleus is then going to send out an axon to the contralateral somatosensory cortex. It's the same postcentral gyrus we've been talking about since the beginning of the semester. This is your somatosensory cortex. Question?
Does it matter if it like crosses over earlier or later?
No, it's not. It's not the place where it crosses over isn't important. No, the important thing is that you have an ipsilateral vestibular nucleus that's making a connection with the contralateral thalamus. That all that sensory information, remember I talked about, has to go through the thalamus, and that's how it gets there. So vestibular sensory information coming in. Ben?
I just want to make sure I have this right. So the vestibular nucleus attaches ipsilateral and contralateral to the oculomotor and trochlear?
Yes, as well as abducens.
And abducens does too?
Vestibular nucleus attaches ipsilateral and contralaterally to the abducens, trochlear, and oculomotor nuclei.
Okay.
Happens in all of them. Okay, so those connections are set up. That's not saying that they're all firing at the same time. That's just telling you that one side is both ipsilateral and contralateral, and the other side is connected ipsilaterally and contralaterally. And that'll be important here in a minute. Is that answered?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. So, and that's it as far as the vestibular system central pathways are concerned. There's one more thing I wanted to point out, and I talked about it when we got to the brainstem contents. I said we'd get to it when we got to the vestibular portion of the course. Well, here we are. Made it to vestibular. And there was a tract that it's a really small tract. It's usually medial, and I said it had to do with vestibular system connection to extraocular eye muscles. Does anybody remember what that tract was? Medial longitudinal fasciculus, okay? So that's where these axons travel up. This tract is the medial longitudinal fasciculus. And this is one that we'll see. It usually hangs out with the medial meniscus. It's most medial. It's just a really small tract. But I'm just pointing that out because that could change the movement of eyes. That's what that tract was. Medial longitudinal fasciculus. Okay, and then the only other player that we haven't talked about here is there going to be a tract that we've talked about a bunch at the beginning of the semester that comes from the vestibular nucleus and goes down the spinal cord. Anybody remember that one? Vestibulospinal. Remember I said that, when you trigger vestibulospinal tract, you upright against gravity triggers extensor muscles. Okay. That's it. That's all the vestibular system central pathways. Really important for lots of different players to know the position of your head in three-dimensional space. Nope, no name for the decussations in this pathway. Auditory, there's one, but this pathway doesn't have any. Any other questions? Okay, this is looking at the vestibular central pathways, okay, and that's that. And the next is something called the vestibulo-ocular reflex, okay? This is something, we're definitely going to talk more about this in neurorehab next year, vestibulo-ocular reflex. And it's looking to see how well the vestibular system is working. It's just a simple test that you can use. Okay. And what I've drawn here is, imagine this is the person's right side and this is the person's left side, and this is the right eye, left eye. Here's your midbrain, pons, medulla, and these are just right now, let's just stick with horizontal semicircular canals here on the outside. So I'll label that. This is your horizontal semicircular canal. Okay. And again, just to keep it simple, I'm going to say that we're going to look at this reflex when this person is turning their head to the right. Okay, person's turning their head to the right. And every time I do this, I think it helps me anyway to know what I'm thinking of. If I asked you to keep your eyes focused straight ahead, so just pick a point that's kind of far away with your eyes focused straight ahead. Just kind of fixate on that spot. Now keep your eyes where they are, but turn your head to the right. Which way does your left eye go? It goes abducts, right? Yep, so if I'm looking straight ahead and I turn my head to the right, my left eye abducts, and my right eye, what does it do? It adducts, right. So that means that the muscles that were activated, and I'm going to say green for go, okay, the muscles that are activated here are my left, which one brings it out to the outside? Lateral rectus, right. So this is my left lateral rectus. So cranial nerve 6, abducens, on the left side, and on the right side, I have part of cranial nerve number 3 for medial rectus, right? And these are the ones that are activated, okay? They're excited, okay? They're working, okay? And without even thinking about it, if the cranial nerve 6 on the left is active, that means that cranial nerve 3 on the right has to be inhibited, right? So on the left, we have inhibition of cranial nerve 3. Okay, because that's just what happens. So this is activated. And then on the right side, you have inhibition of cranial nerve 6, the lateral rectus. Okay, everybody got that? And if you forget, just go ahead and do the experiment. When you look straight ahead, turn your head one way or the other and see which way your eyes go. Okay? And this is something that you don't have to think about, right? That's the importance of VR, vestibular ocular reflex. Its sole purpose in life is to make sure that you can maintain focus on an object while your head's turning. So you didn't say, oh, I have to move my eyes to the outside because my head's moving. It does it automatically. It's a reflex. Okay? You don't even have to think about it. It just works. People who have trouble with vestibular ocular reflex have vestibular problems and usually complain about blurry vision when they're turning their head. And that was one of the symptoms in the video in the beginning that we listened to. Okay, questions about that? Yeah. Oh, it's okay. It's just stretching. Okay. Okay. Now, we're just going to go ahead and fill in the rest of the pieces of the puzzle here. This is just a review. So thinking about the horizontal semicircular canal, this is the bony component. And then we're just going to draw in the membranous labyrinth here. Okay, this is what we looked at earlier. Okay, there's this membranous labyrinth, and then on the bottom, we're going to have cells, tall cells coming up, off the bottom, on the right side, and we'll do the same thing on the left side. So here's my membranous labyrinth, and the horizontal semicircular canal. Okay, and realize that the vestibule is going to be where the hole is, same as before. Okay, so there's my tall cells, and I got my kinocilia here that's closest to the vestibule. And kinocilia here. And the whole gamish is covered with that gelatinous matrix called the cupula, upside down cup of jello right here. Okay. The name of that sensory organ again is, write that down, that's your crista ampullaris. Crista ampullaris located in the ampulla. Okay. And this is something we just did. Hopefully it's got it. Okay, now we can draw in the players in the brainstem here. In pons, we have our vestibular nucleus, both right and left. Okay, we talked about the, I don't know what color I used. This greenish color. You know, since we're just worried about cranial nerve 3 and 4, I'm just going to draw in abducens nucleus here, bilateral, and I'm going to draw in ocular motor nucleus, bilateral, because those are the only two things we're worried about. And again, here's my midline. So nothing new yet. Everything's the same that we've seen. But we know which ways the eyes are moving. We also know that coming out of the bottom of these cells here, out of the sensory organ, it's going to be the vestibular portion of the 8th cranial nerve, making a synapse here on the right. And then this is going to be your left cranial nerve 8. So, back to what we talked about a little bit ago. If this person turns their head to the right horizontal semicircular canal, the endolint's going to move in this direction, then the kinocilia toward the vestibule. Is that going to lead to depolarization or hyperpolarization? Depolarization. So this guy's going to be, if I'm turning my head to the right, I'm going to get a depolarization here. Which is an activation, right? Another way to think about it. That nerve is depolarizing. And again, still turning my head to the right, kinocilia is going to bend away. So on the left side, you're going to get a hyperpolarization. Which is another way to say inhibition. So nothing more than what we just talked about. Now all we have to do is connect the dots and put the pieces together. And so you can cheat and just look up here. So this side is depolarizing. Okay, this is sending an activation signal. So coming from the right side, the vestibular nucleus is going to send out axons from the right side that are activating the lateral rectus or the abducens nucleus on the left side, right? And the ipsilateral cranial nerve 3. So that's what's activated. So the signal here is going to be positive for ipsilateral cranial nerve 3 and contralateral abducens. And the signal coming from the other side, I want to cross colors. I'm trying to, if I use red, it'll probably come through. The signal coming from the other side, this side's inhibitory, coming from this vestibular nucleus. I'm going to inhibit abducens nucleus contralaterally here, okay? But I'm going to also inhibit the ipsilateral cranial nerve 3 or ocular motor nucleus. And that's how the vestibular ocular reflex works. Questions? And when you actually do this test, you're looking for problems with the vestibular system. You tilt the person's head down just about 30 degrees, and then you shake their head back and forth, and you have them read like a Snellen chart, like a standard eye chart. And we'll do this test next year. Okay. One more piece. Just one more. Lots of new stuff. Let's just switch over to the auditory system central pathway. This is the last drawing, and we have we can look at a video too, if we have time. Okay, the auditory system central pathway. So in this picture, what I've attempted to do is here's the person's ears. So for the auditory system, and this is going to be the cochlear portion of the 8th cranial nerve, so it comes from the cochlea. So if you want to imagine the cochlea sitting here in this person's ear, right, and the information coming in bilaterally. Okay, that's a cochlea. Okay, and this is going to be the cochlear portion of cranial nerve 8. Okay. And closely connected with the vestibular nucleus. It's not something we've labeled as of yet, so they don't see a whole lot of problems with hearing with destruction of this nucleus. But this is going to be your cochlear nucleus. Okay, just a little bit above the vestibular nucleus and the level of the pons. Okay, and the cochlear portion of cranial nerve 8 comes here, down bilaterally. And synapses on this cochlear nucleus. Okay, so you're getting sound from both sides, connecting to an ipsilateral cochlear nucleus. The next step of the chain is something similar that you've heard the word before, but it's in the pons. There's another nucleus, okay? And associated with the cerebellum, we talked about the inferior olivary nucleus. Well, associated with hearing, this is going to be your superior olivary nucleus. We talked before about the superior colliculus being associated with vision in the region of the pretectal area associated with the auditory system. It's going to be here is your inferior colliculus. So inferior colliculus associated with auditory information coming in. And then one more thing to worry about. You have a special nucleus in the thalamus that's associated with auditory information. What was the name of the nucleus in the thalamus associated with visual information? Lateral geniculate nucleus, okay? Associated with the auditory system, this is going to be your medial geniculate nucleus. Medial. And coming out of the medial, it's coming out of the lateral geniculate nucleus. There were two kind of rainbow axons coming out of the lateral geniculate nucleus for vision. Does anybody remember the name of those two? Yeah, they're optic radiation, superior and inferior optic radiation. In the auditory system, they're auditory radiations. So the medial geniculate nucleus sends out auditory radiations that are going to synapse here in the temporal lobe that's involved in hearing. Okay, kind of like a Bullwinkle horn. Okay, these are your auditory radiations. So with hearing, information coming in from the cochlear portion of the 8th cranial nerve synapses with the cochlear nucleus. The cochlear nucleus itself sends out axons both ipsilaterally and contralaterally to the superior olivary nucleus. Okay, so both sides are going to synapse ipsilaterally and contralaterally. And that area of crossing over from the cochlear nucleus to the superior olivary nucleus is known as your trapezoid body. Okay, and then information makes it to the superior olivary nucleus. So information coming in from the right side immediately crosses over to both sides. Okay, so you have information that's reached both ipsa and contralateral superior olivary nucleus, sends out an axon that synapses with your inferior colliculus. Okay, and then that inferior colliculus, again, crosses over contralaterally. So information from both sides is now mixed on both sides. And the inferior colliculus then goes and sends axons to its ipsilateral medial geniculate nucleus in the thalamus. Why this is important is you should know that you won't see, if somebody had a brainstem stroke or a brainstem lesion of any kind, unless it's targeted to the collicular nucleus, it's going to go on both sides. Okay, so if I've lost this even if I've lost this cochlear nucleus, that information is going to come in and go to the opposite side. Okay, the only time you're going to have an issue with hearing loss is going to be not a lower motor neuron, apologies, is going to be a lesion to the cochlear portion of cranial nerve 8, okay? Because everything comes in and then immediately crosses over to the other side. Okay, so if you have a lesion anywhere inside the pons, it's not going to result in hearing loss. Okay, you're going to be able to hear from both sides still. The only time it's going to result in hearing loss is if you have a lesion here. Cochlear portion of cranial nerve 8. Probably more than you wanted to know about hearing. Questions? A lot of new words, really. It's not that much. It's a lot of new words. It's a lot of information, but hopefully it's not that hard to understand. And if anybody has any questions, just let me know. We're done. Thank you.